Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, wherever you're in the world, it is your Lord Saviour with another trip to Chicago by night as part of my ongoing campaign diary recap session thing. Now, before we get into tonight's session, or rather the most recent of sessions as of the recording, the 9th of June 2024 in the year of our Lord Telos, I actually want to amend something that I forgot to mention at the end of the previous session, where you remember the coterie had to go and rescue Malkavian player's Touchstone from the Midnight Circus. The Malkavian player, after their whole cobweb visage and their sire eating them, had an encounter with the Ringmaster, who allowed them to take their Touchstone, but they had to replace it with somebody else, and all they had to do was give them a name. And the name they gave was Anthrax, which doesn't surprise me. I thought it was either going to be Nikolai or Anthrax that was going to get the boot, or it could have been somebody else entirely, but no, it was Anthrax. So the Malkavian anti-tribute, who the characters haven't really interacted with at all, but they know there's a bit of an issue, now is part of the Midnight Circus, which is a very interesting choice indeed, as is the noises that my dog Holly, who is down there doing, snoring her little titties off. But that sort of led into the characters leaving the Midnight Circus, Dana, the sire, the Malkavian player, driving off in their beetle and leaving the other two stranded, and that is where this session picks up immediately. So the Malkavian was being carried away by their sire in their tiny little beetle that now had bullet holes in it due to an encounter with some hunters of some description, and Malkavian player had to force their side to stop driving like a lunatic, parking awkwardly on the side of the pavement or sidewalk, as we make the American terminology just smooth into place. And they found out a bit more about what they saw. They saw visions of their sire, who they learned that the Malkavian player learned that the sire gobbled up, so to speak. He was a right arsehole, sexist pig of the time sort of thing. And there was more of those visions of that prophecy with the city on fire, the roaring and the snarling and all that yummy fun stuff. But there was also the discovery that the Malkavian sire has been hearing and feeling the pulls of the beckoning, which has made the Malkavian player a little bit anxious. And I made a comment saying that they felt it more since the blood bond has snapped, just to see what the response of that would be. And now the Malkavian player, in future sessions, is going to try and find a means of preventing their sire from fucking off. And that wasn't something that I originally even planned, but it was a week before the game that we had, or it was just after the previous one that I just had the idea. Wouldn't it be really interesting if the sire had felt the pulls of the beckoning? And there you go. That's now canon. Canon to our game, at least. And they were discussing a bit more about that, and there was a bit of a nicer, wholesome more moment when they were interrupted with a knock on the window, where it was the female werewolf from before, who just so happened to be in town, and thanked the Malkavian for saving their kinfolk cousin about all of that. And despite the whole EBGBs, for lack of a better phrase, the werewolf was feeling for the vampires in question, particularly Dana. They thought that there was this sense of honour and this commitment to their loved ones, as it were, to hunt them down and make this apology. And this sort of weird, pleasant moment between the vampires and the werewolf was interrupted by the presence of more vampire hunters who shot at the werewolf. And of course, the werewolf being werewolf didn't take much of damage, it was enough to do some significant damage. The Malkavian player gave them the opportunity just to hop into the car so they can get off to safety, which I wasn't quite expecting there, to be honest. But it just goes to show, even at Humanity 6, you can, at times be a decent person. And with a really successful roll from Dana, whose door is now missing from when the Garous just tore it off, sort of thing, in their glabro form, the wolf man or woman in this case, and a poor roll from the hunters, the car chase that I had planned was really, really fucking short. It was just done to one roll, and that was it. which we all had a bit of a giggle about, but you know what, sometimes the dice just sometimes produce some very interesting results, and Dana was on form with her driving. And then the Malkavian player had their side take them back to a pub or bar in which the Garou works, who's now called Sahara, because that was literally the name that came to mind. Like, what's the first thing that came to mind when they asked for a name? Sahara. Who owns a bar called the Bulldozer, again another weird thing that came to mind. And the following night, which will be the Saturday night, they are requested to come and talk about this hunter problem, try and sort out the fucking mess that's in this city at the moment, which is, I'm sure, is going to create lots of interesting conversations, I am sure. So we then will move on to the Brujah and Lasombra player, which is where most of the session seemed to revolve around, particularly that of the Lasombra player. The Lasombra player had finally, after many sessions, and really with only a few days in-game, was able to speak to Gabriella. And you may remember from a few sessions ago, or however long that was now, I guess, that there were like 3 internet cafes that the ghoul had narrowed it down to where they could well be. And I was going to decide like a random encounter, like one place number takes you there, one place takes you to somewhere else, and the third one is going to have the person in question. And of course, the Lasombra player got the right number, so they went to the right place, which is unlike the surprise present bomb idea, where it ultimately didn't matter, and there was a very clear decision I had planned here. And so they had all that interaction. The Brujah player was able to print off some photos that they took at the Midnight Circus and some other bits and pieces from a printer there from like somebody was working the late hour and could barely keep their eyes open. And Gabriella was very open about, you know, helping out with the security elements. They just wanted some money for like a sponsorship for like a video game charity stream, which should really unveil their age a bit, but it obviously went over the Lasombra player's head, I guess. But then they had to go and deliver this USB stick and a letter to the house of the Touchstone, the Samantha Morris, which caused the Lasombra player to completely fucking panic. Like, what's the connection here? What's going on? And I thought by identifying that they were young looking and they played video games was an indicator that maybe there's a bit more of a personal connection rather than, you know, a vampire like spinning their fingers around like the new lover of the Touchstone of the Lasombra player. And there was a part of me that wanted to try and point this out, but the two of them, Lasombra and Brujah, were like just chatting it out with each other, and it was just kind of fun just seeing them come up with this plan, like trying to work out what's going on. So I just let them go on with it, to be honest. They took them to the house, they found somebody in question answered the door, there was some awkward interrogation from the Lasombra player, I guess, to just try and find out what was going on, and it was quite frankly the family visit, family staying over, like cousins and whatnot, so they were just going to be in the neighbourhood, and it was quite frankly, and then what was on the USB stick was like a really shitty ex-boyfriend who put like lewd photos and videos and whatnot online, which got a very good reaction out of the Brujah and Lasombra, and like, well, who are they? Where can we find them? Sort of thing. Now, Gabriella said that via this other individual said that they were going to like try and sort this out, had it under control. But if the players do like try and investigate that further, that would be a very interesting outcome indeed. But yeah, it was just very much so that these two knew each other. They went to the University of Chicago with each other, and Gabriella had like contacts, and the two of them, Lasombra and Brujah, had like a duo investigator thing set up. The Brujah was a bit more natural with it because that's like part of their mask, whereas Lasombra was just a bit comical and like hiding around the corner and like sort of like popping out when they felt the need to. They didn't literally pop out like that, but it was a bit comical in my head. But then again, so was all of this, to be fair. But it was cool to see like them interact, them actually like do a bit of investigation work and try and find out a bit more about the family and whatnot, which is more than I can say that the Lasombra player has done at all throughout this entire chronicle. But I can understand their mindset by wanting to keep their distance from the Touchstone in question. The Brujah player had actually now learned a bit more about this Touchstone in question and how important they are, and so on and so forth. And the Brujah player like made an offer like to keep coming back to this house, you know, just to check up on them to make sure they're okay, so like no one's skulking about, which I thought was very sweet for a couple of reasons. Like, first of all, you know, the friendship that's beginning to bond here, which is very different from how the Brujah player saw the Lasombra at the very beginning of our chronicle through the sacrifice. But it's also kind of an inverse of what their sire is doing to them. Like, if you remember, their sire, Evie, is watching his lover, Lauren, which far away wherever they're based, and like we'll be getting in touch with them with like a little update, like how they're getting on and whatever. And now the Brujah player is wanting to do that with the Lasombra, which I thought it's nice how they grow up quick, you know. Childlike sire, as the expression goes. But of course, unfortunately for the Lasombra player, that's not exactly going to pan out for them the way that they think it would. But before I get on to that, the other thing that the Lasombra player wanted to try and do is to learn a bit more about these Garou glyphs that are on the side of their club, or were. I can't actually remember if they were painted off, but there's the picture and it's been printed off and whatever. And I found this interaction a bit perplexing, to be honest. It was stretching a bit more of my improvisation to the point where I think the cracks were beginning to show a little bit. Because they wanted to try and find Portia, because Portia is the individual they know that knows quite a lot. But the thing is, Portia had already displayed their full extent of their knowledge. They were able to acknowledge that, yes, these Garou communicate with these glyphs, but I don't know what they mean. I don't know much about them. I just know that's a thing within their culture. That's kind of been forgotten or gone over the Lasombra's head, so they went to go and visit Portia. Now, Portia, I know, is very rarely actually at their club, or at least that's how I interpreted the material. And Portia's got their own life, like moving in and around Chicago, doing their own things. We've hinted at that they're doing stuff with Nikolai now. Those who've read up with Portia knows how they're interacting with a lot of other elements within Chicago, because Portia gets around a lot. And I've made two mistakes here within the grander canon of VTM. I've brought Prius back from the dead because I knew that Portia had somebody close, like a ghoul with them, and I remember it was Prius. So Prius isn't dead now. So, but whatever, it doesn't really matter the grand scheme of things. A ghoul, you know, that really was very dismissive of the Lasombra, who made it clear that, you know, Portia isn't here. I don't know who you are. You're clearly not important, so to speak. Which led on to them like a series of roles to try and find where could I locate another Tremere to try and work out what these glyphs mean, and that led back to the University of Chicago, although this would be the Lasombra's first visit there, in character that is, and I had to improvise an interaction between them and a individual that I named Courtney, first name that came to head. And yeah, it started off pretty poorly because the Lasombra had expressed how wound up and pissed off they are with everything that was happening, like just frustrated trying to get, you know, stuff, and they didn't think that this individual, Courtney, was being all that helpful. So I made them make a composure and resolve roll, which ended them like losing their temper and like clocking Courtney across the face, breaking their nose, and then that sort of progressed into Courtney being a bit more frightened with the assertiveness of the Lasombra, not through presence, oddly enough. Well, then again, they have awe, so that wouldn't have helped them here anyway. Through a mistake from both mine and then onto the Lasombra player's part, mentioning that Prius was the ghoul to Portia, the player had forgotten that the Tremere, they can't thrall vampires, but they can thrall mortals. This was also something that I forgot, because this then led into this vampire being very awkward and like stuttery, like after they're trying to hide something. This grand conspiracy it works, when really I didn't know what I was doing, and just having to improvise a bit more. But the Lasombra player enjoyed being a bit of a bully, which was interesting given their conviction. But I didn't do anything about this because I knew what was going to be coming later that session. And I do have to come up with some sort of reason as to why this individual was, like, acting the way that they were now. And they've, like, I'm going to call up somebody called Tracy, which, coincidentally, there is a Tremere called Tracy, but they're known by something else. And they'll have to meet the following night to, you know, discuss Garou things if said Tremere knows anything about Garou glyphs and Garou culture in particular. And also, there's also regarding the conviction bit, the player was enjoying themselves a bit, asserting their dominance, as it were, which I will touch upon later on in the spoiler section. But then this led on to the following night, or should I say the following morning, where I made a point saying they were moving the clock forward by 8 hours, which is like 8 in the morning, and that made everybody feel really fucking worried. Oh god, daylight vampires, it means hunters. And I made the Lasombra player, I think it's the humanity that you have to roll for V5 to get up during the daylight hours. They failed, and I did my usual, oh, that was a weird thing for me to ask you. Everybody make a rouse check, we're now into night time. Which they all did, and I can't remember how many of them got hungry, some of them did, some of them didn't. But we moved back onto the Lasombra player where they awoke with chains around their body, a spotlight directly below them, henchmen, and the cowled face of Patty Bryans. And it was properly revealed that the person that had been chasing them around Chicago for the last few nights was Harry Milliner. And oh boy, that was a lot of fun to see play out. Because the players didn't recognise what was going on immediately. They were all, first of all, shocked that Harry had betrayed the group, or mainly betrayed Asteria, which is the name of the Malkavian player. Betrayed them because they had a bit of a friendship going on, and there was a bit of a conversation that Harry was doing a little speech about family and removing this, that, and the other. And one by one, the penny began to drop that the one who had their head blown off very early on in the sacrifice, this John Smith, was connected to Harry Milliner. And when everybody had realised what was happening, jaws were hitting the floor. It was such a wonderful feeling seeing that paying off. Because, I've mentioned this before, and it's just it's been months of preparation and playing the long game to find that perfect moment for them, to have this encounter with Harry. And the Lasombra player had made a point saying that they know what they were talking about, which did interrupt a huge portion of the story and how they were able to work all this out. But you know what? That ultimately doesn't matter because the outcome was still the same. Where Samantha Morris, the touchstone of the Lasombra player, just was wheeled in on a wheelie chair, and this sort of made the Lasombra player super fucking worried. There was a sense of desperation, shall I say, where it's you can make me your servant, 100 or so years or whatever it was. It was really desperate to make sure that the loved one didn't die. But unfortunately, Harry has mafia associations, so of course, when family takes from family, there's a lot of blood that is spilt. And there was the, I guess for lack of a better phrase, decapitation of Samantha Morris, where he shot at her head and the head exploded. And I sort of played up the seriousness of this gunshot, where there had been gunshots before, gunfights and whatnot, as I've described in previous sessions. But in this instance here, I just really drew out, there was this loud explosion. It was almost like a flash of light, and your ears are ringing with this loud bang. And when everything comes back together, you're sensing or remembering where you were, you see that directly in front of you that man was missing bits of her head. To really pull and tug at the heartstrings, to really make the character suffer, and to really drive home the horror of having a lover that you haven't really seen. And this is the second time that Samantha had seen the Touchstone properly. For many years, they had no idea what was going on. There wasn't much time for communication. Harry did give them the opportunity to say goodbye, but the Lasombra player chose that time to be desperate, which, to be fair, is a very natural reaction where you feel that your loved one is about to get fucking blown to smithereens. And it was also revealed, so I had to go back a little bit, that Patty has now been embraced into the Hakata. And it was sort of revealed as, she can't talk. And again, that didn't click immediately with everybody. And that worried the Brujah player the most, honestly enough. Obviously they weren't there, but they were witnessing this. He must have been there. And I think it was then that all the bits and pieces were coming together with each player, working out, so he was falling into the police station, he did this, he did that. And I'm sure as a next session comes along, more pieces will be revealed. But then we get onto the bit where the Lasombra player was just on the verge of a fucking rage here, frenzy, just wanting to destroy Harry. And through blood surges, uses of potents, they managed to smash and break free from these chains that were keeping them in place. Now, I don't think it should have worked like that if we do it by the book, but, you know, just the emotion, the tension with all the different mechanics and how it supported the narrative, I allowed them to, like, it took them 2 rolls to do this and they just all, like, burst free, and it led to a very brief encounter where the Lasombra player used their arms of Ahriman to, like, toss aside these mortals, one hit into a wall so hard that they just instantly died and just all their bones just crumpled. One of them had like their head, like neck squeezed so tight that it just broke the windpipe and just attached it that way. They tried like throwing a bit at Patty. I think that was it. Patty was thrown by the door where Harry had just managed to escape, like collided with the wall, and whilst the Arms of Ahriman stuff was dealing with the thralls, Patty had managed to escape with Harry, and the two of them just whizzed off in his Lamborghini, and she saw, the Lasombra player saw that they came here through her car and the boot was up as well. And that's just actually kind of how the session ended, to be honest, just seeing that the car had whizzed off into the ether. Actually, there was a brief car chase. There was a brief car chase where Harry was able to get away very quickly in his Lamborghini, which led to the Lasombra player going back to their partner, like holding what was left of them and just booing their eyes out. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. They incurred 2 stains for the loss of a touchstone as per the rules. The first stain, redemption thing, they lost that humanity, and the second one they didn't. So now the Lasombra player's on 5 humanity, which is a very, very troubling place to be for a vampire who was in a very early session. All they could focus on was losing that 1 dot of humanity. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. So Lasombra player now has like gone down this tunnel vision road of revenge and pure hatred, wanting nothing more than to bring eternal damnation upon Harry, like with torture, staking, all these other bits and pieces, and whatever other information that can be pulled from him. And I do have plans in regarding to all of this, which you're going to have to find out in the spoiler section of this campaign diary. So if you are one of my players and still playing in this chronicle, politely fuck off. And if you don't want any other spoilers, you can also piss off as well. And before you do fuck off, do check out the various links in the description below, where you'll find various drive-through RPG and Storyteller Vault books, various in-canon and homebrew material, and if you purchase any of those things, I get some of the money back, so I can continue to provide exciting content such as this, and wonderful lore dives, book reviews, and all the other bits and pieces. It just helps to support the channel financially, and you have my eternal gratitude. That's the best heart you're going to get out of me here, because my actual one is cold and dank. So if you've enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and all that stuff, and I'll see you for the next time. But as for everybody else, let's go on to the spoilers. And I have some concerns regarding the Lasombra player, where I feel they're kind of panicking a little bit. And when it comes to that point in our chronicle, when we finished wrapping this up, and my players are no doubt are going to be watching this, they can either confirm or deny this, where the Lasombra players have quite a lot on their plate at the moment. They have the stuff with Horatio, they've got that werewolf inconvenience, they now have Harry to deal with, and it's kind of a lot of pressure that's built up, and they've expressed publicly and privately that they couldn't really cope with much more. And there was also the message that they were beginning to regret playing a member of Clan Lasombra, which I do feel a bit odd about, because I had warned them from the get-go that the Lasombra weren't particularly well liked within the Camarilla. And it also implies to me, really, that if they chose any other clan, I wouldn't be giving them so much shit. But I feel that the Lasombra player has forgotten that every single character that knows that the Malkavian player doesn't like them, just on the basis they are a Malkavian. And Brujah player themselves, well, the Brujah and the Camera don't exactly get on at the best of times, but the Fee5 meta plot, it was Theo Bell who blew up Hardestat and took the Brujah to the fucking Anarchs. And Brujah player themselves is like on a fucking hairline from having a blood hunt called upon them because they're indecisive loyalties. So it's not like I'm giving them all a load of hate because they are a Lasombra player. If they have the same concept with any other clan, I'm fairly certain all of this would have happened anyway. But, you know, the Lasombra do have a bit more of a hard time, especially with how we're doing it, where our version of Chicago, the Lasombra, like, only joined a fucking month ago. And there's also the fact that the players are well, they're not fledglings, they're neonates. Like, they're young, they don't have anything, and they do have to work their way up and backstab and, like, go out into the world and, like, get contacts, which hasn't really happened all that much with really any of the players. Some have done it more so than others, but this is Vampire the Masquerade. You do get those power struggles, and you do get what you want eventually, but it does take a lot of hard work. It's just politics. The Camarilla was designed to be like a complete caricature of the political world. It's Vampire the Masquerade, and I have given them, the group, all the solutions to their problems, like, bit by bit. As I said, I'm not just going to, like, sort their problems out for them, and even so, you can go through my various campaign diaries and just know how generous I have been with all the solutions to that. Like, they generally find the answer to their problems fairly quickly on, and in the case of Horatio, he's been categorically told them how to deal with that. But there's also the moral options, which I've waffled about before. However, I don't want the player to feel like they are overwhelmed and they don't really know what to do, so to speak. So I am going to throw them a bone, and if they take it, then that'll make life easier for them. But unless things get really awkward, I'm not going to categorically say this is the solution to your problem, cheat codes engage sort of thing. So I'm hoping that come the next session, with that Saturday night, so the whole game's this chronicle after the sacrifice has gone over the process of a week now, where the Malkavian player will text the group to say, I have a meeting with a werewolf now. Does anybody, and we're talking about these hunters and whatever, does anybody want to come along? I suspect the Brujah would, because it will provide them lots of opportunity for their character to be some sort of investigator, a mediator, and like perhaps a neutral party to deliver one message to the other, which is sort of the thing that the character's been wanting to do for ages. I would hope the Lasombra player, in and out of character, are not so absorbed with this idea of revenge and like getting that bit of power, not being pushed around by anybody, that they will see that if they go to a place that's owned by a werewolf and have lots of werewolves there, they would be able to answer the question of what do these glyphs mean. Now, I was intending for this meeting to happen anyway, or as you know, I was planning to have some degree of a meeting here, and I did say that I wasn't going to force it, but these sort of things have just kind of happened within game, and that's just kind of what's happening now. And I did have like these other NPC Garou about, and I'm going to kind of put a lot of them there. There's a Glasswalker hacker that the Malkavian player briefly met in this session, who's going to be there just to make sure that the players weren't followed, and like making sure that nobody weird is coming towards this club. And there's going to be mentioned best hacker in the city, and hopefully the Lasombra player will put two and two together. Maybe that person will be able to help me out get my money back, sort of thing. There's going to be a Shadow Lord there that may be able to help out with this vampire problem, because of course the Shadow Lords have some experience with dealing with kindred within the Garou Nation. There's some great amount of contention because of that. There will be a Silent Strider who with gift, is able to jump in and out of the Dark Umbra, otherwise known as the Shadowlands, which will give Harry the lack of a chance to escape. Which leads me on to another portion of this plan. Like, these Garou are not going to be willing to help out these coaches. They need to prove themselves that they can like handle themselves and not just a bunch of pushovers. So what will happen is that the Shadow Lord says, oh, I want you to go and kill this person. That person is going to be inked. He's going to appear in a very weird scenario, like this Sabbat pack, or he's probably going to call them a Sabbat pack, because, lack of true understanding has been giving us grief. And even though their pack has been like weirdly disappearing off the face of the planet, which is partly to do with the players, there is just him left. And you find him, and I'll give you Harry, and I'll have to make up some reason as to why the Shadow Lord and Harry would know each other. So then that way the Lasombra player can get their bit of vengeance and find out whatever it is they need to find out. However, they will probably forget, as I feel all of them have done, that I have mentioned a couple of times that Harry is rather close/important to the very structure of the Milliners of Boston. I think I mentioned at one point that he was the grandson of Francis Milliner, who was like the OG Milliner, the one who received the embrace via Augustus, who also diablerized the last Cappadocian, whose name I've completely forgotten. So killing him is obviously going to cause a lot of problems. Like, doing any harm to him is going to cause a lot of problems, but I somehow think Lasombra players not going to do that, because they haven't really learnt much from their mistakes. Like, trying to be clever and witty sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes you just have to accept the fate, or just, like, do the most obvious thing. But we'll see. Hopefully, in the presence of their coterie, they can get them to, like, calm down a little bit and work at that, hey, maybe we shouldn't do too much to him, otherwise we're going to piss off an entire clan. Or at least a very large portion of them. And that will just start a whole nother war later down the line, which I won't do in this chronicle, because we've already got the fucking werewolf situation to deal with. And this connection with Inks will lead them to the Black Spiral Dancers, and then things will get really ramped up. It's like a session or two, and then it will be the end of the chronicle. But then again, the players may want to do some other stuff, and it might expand things a little bit. But one thing that one of the players wants to do, which reminds me, is the fact that the Malkavian player, with their predator type of extortionist and trying to find out a way to keep their sire from, like, wandering off via the beckoning, is like the Tremere player is wanting to... So the Lasombra player is wanting to find Tremere, because Tremere know everything, apparently. They had the idea of speaking to the Banu Hakim, who, like, do assassin work. And it would fit nicely with the predator type, and they would much rather align themselves with the Banu Hakim than the Tremere, because of the association with Nikolai. And can probably, like, get some work going between the two of them, and I think that's a very interesting fit. And of course, this isn't a nag upon the Lasombra player, even though I feel that it may well be the case. It's just me expressing some mild concerns about how it may end up, how the other players may end up in complete ruin. And maybe with a bit of a talking, the other players can get the Lasombra player to, hey, explore the world, use your status of Keeper of Elysium, like, try and do something to get yourself to go up the ranks to be Primogen. But we'll see. Players are able to do as much or as little as they want. I can only just sit and ponder and just postulate on their decisions. So, if you've liked this particular episode and this rant, do give it a like and subscribe and click on the bell to make sure you get all those spicy notifications about all the fun stuff that I'm uploading. And if you want to support the channel even more, check out the various links in the description below where you can follow me on various social media, and check out various books that you can purchase for your own games using a special affiliate link where if you purchase it with those links, I get some of the money back, and I'm able to provide more books and lore dives for, well, all of you lovely bunch. So, yeah, go and do that, and go and make this usually miserable, depressed fuck smile. And until next time, farewell.